Paris, 1981, the City of Light. Tourists fill the cobbled streets. Painters line the Seine. Lovers sip wine in Montmartre cafes. This is a city built on beauty, art, and elegance. The last place you'd expect to encounter one of the most horrific crimes of the 20th century. But beneath the romance and charm, something unspeakable was festering in the shadows. Something so disturbing, so grotesque, that even seasoned investigators would struggle to find the words. This was not a robbery or a crime of passion. It was a fantasy realized, a dream born in darkness, finally played out in blood. This is the true story of Issei Sagawa, a man who murdered and cannibalized his classmate, avoided justice, and went on to become a celebrity, not despite his crime, but because of it. Issei Sagawa was born on April 26, 1949, in Kobe, Japan. His birth was traumatic. He was born so premature that doctors feared he wouldn't survive the night. His body was underdeveloped, his bones fragile, his immune system weak. As an infant, he battled enteritis, a disease of the small intestine, and narrowly escaped death. His survival was considered miraculous, but it came at a price. Sagawa would always remain small, frail, and sickly. From an early age, Sagawa felt inferior to those around him. He would later describe this complex with obsessive detail. His Japanese features, his height, his ugliness, as he put it, all became the seeds of a deep self-loathing. And from that self-loathing grew something far more dangerous. At age 6, Sagawa said he experienced his first cannibalistic desire. It was during a class activity. He looked at a male classmate's thigh and felt an urge he couldn't explain to bite it, to eat it. At the time, he had no language for it, just a feeling, a desire that would never go away. As he entered adolescence, Sagawa's fantasies became more elaborate and more explicit. He became obsessed with Western women, tall, blonde, healthy, everything he wasn't. To him, they represented a kind of perfection, and he felt the only way to possess that perfection was to consume it. By the time he reached university, Sagawa was spiraling. Though he was an intelligent literature student at Wako University in Tokyo, he struggled socially and emotionally. His obsession with cannibalism hadn't faded. In fact, it had become his secret life. At 24, that life spilled into the real world. Then came the first real attempt. At 24, Sagawa followed a tall German woman home, not out of affection, but hunger. As she slept, he crept into her apartment, clutching a kitchen knife. His plan was simple and chilling. Slice off a piece of her buttock, flee, and feast in silence. But as he loomed over her bed, she woke. She screamed. Sagawa froze, then fled, a shadow scrambling back into the night. He was caught and arrested, but the truth stayed buried. He told police it was an attempted sexual assault. He never mentioned the cannibalism. His wealthy father paid a settlement, and the charges were quietly dropped. The justice system closed the file, but Sagawa? He was just getting started. And Sagawa took it, not to rehabilitate, but to refine his fantasies. The fear he had felt during the failed attempt only deepened his desire. He told himself next time he would not fail. In 1977, Sagawa left Japan and enrolled at the Sorbonne in Paris, one of Europe's most prestigious universities. Officially, he was there to pursue a PhD in comparative literature, but Sagawa himself would later admit his true goal was to find a woman to kill and eat. Paris was ideal. It was cosmopolitan, anonymous, and filled with women who fit his exact type: blonde, Western, confident. He moved into a small apartment in the 16th arrondissement, isolated but functional. He spent most of his time reading, writing, and visiting sex workers. Later, he confessed to bringing some of them home, planning to kill them. He would point a gun at them as they undressed and freeze. Every time, he said, his body locked up. He couldn't go through with it. But the fantasies never stopped. And then he met Renée Hartevelt. Renée was a 25-year-old Dutch student studying literature. She spoke several languages, loved poetry, and had a warm, open personality. She and Sagawa met during class and struck up a casual friendship. Renée wasn't just another classmate, she was warmth incarnate. Fluent in multiple languages, drawn to literature, always offering help where others might have turned away. Maybe she saw Sagawa as a quiet outsider. Maybe she thought kindness could bridge the gap. But to Sagawa, Renée wasn't a peer. She was an ideal, a fantasy, a manifestation of everything he believed he lacked: grace, beauty, belonging. In his mind, consuming her wasn't violence, it was communion. And that's what made it monstrous. Something to consider. If someone seems harmless but hides fantasies this dark, should we be watching more closely? Can obsession alone drive someone to kill, or does it always take something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're the kind of person who needs to understand the why behind the darkest crimes, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. He didn't snap, he chose. Quietly, calculatedly. He decided she would be the one. On June 11, 1981, Sagawa invited Renée to his apartment under the pretense of studying German poetry. He arrived in the afternoon, unaware of what was coming. He had prepared the space, the wine, the rifle. As she read aloud at his desk, he stepped behind her and raised the gun. Without warning, he shot her in the back of the neck. She died instantly. He claims he fainted from the shock. When he awoke, the realization hit him he had done it. The dream had become reality. Now he could begin the real purpose. What followed was almost too gruesome to believe. Sagawa undressed her, sexually assaulted her corpse, and began the process of cannibalization. He first tried to bite into her flesh but couldn't break the skin, so he left the apartment, bought a butcher's knife, and returned. For the next 2 days, he didn't run or panic. He cooked. He sliced flesh from her with surgical care: thighs, cheeks, lips, laying them out like ingredients, seasoning them with salt and mustard. He described the texture as soft and odorless, like raw tuna. In his mind, this wasn't desecration. It was art, a ritual, and he documented every moment, not out of guilt, but pride. He photographed each stage, documenting what he called his most intimate moment. The remains he didn't consume were stored in his refrigerator or wrapped in plastic. But as the body began to decompose, he knew it couldn't last. On June 13th, Sagawa packed the remaining body parts into 2 suitcases. His plan was to dump them in the Bois de Boulogne, a wooded park on the outskirts of Paris. He called a cab. But as he struggled to drag the suitcases through the park, passers-by noticed the blood seeping from the seams. Police were called. When they opened the bags, they discovered Renée's remains. Sagawa was arrested on the spot. He confessed immediately, calmly, coldly. "I killed her to eat her flesh," he told police. Paris, and soon the world, was horrified. Sagawa spent 2 years in pre-trial detention while the French legal system tried to determine what to do with him. Despite his confession, multiple psychiatric evaluations declared him legally insane and unfit to stand trial. He was sent to a secure mental institution outside Paris. Meanwhile, in Japan, the public was already hearing whispers of what had happened. Curiosity turned to obsession. In 1984, Sagawa was deported to Japan. French authorities assumed he would be institutionalized for life. But Sagawa wasn't locked away. Not in France. Not in Japan. After a short psychiatric evaluation, doctors declared him sane, driven not by madness, but by perversion. And since no formal charges existed in Japan and France refused to release their sealed records, the law had no grip on him. There was no loophole. There was no technicality. There was just nothing. Within 15 months, Issei Sagawa walked out of the hospital a free man. Instead of retreating into obscurity, Sagawa stepped forward, into the spotlight. He wasn't just tolerated, he was embraced. He wrote disturbing memoirs, including In the Fog, where he detailed every slice, every bite. He appeared on talk shows, calm and unashamed, recounting his crime as if it were a dream. He reviewed restaurants in glossy magazines, describing flavors with the same mouth that once described flesh. He starred in underground horror films, sometimes playing himself. And at one point he even helped create a comic book, panels inked with blood-red shadows narrating his moment of truth. He was no longer just a murderer. He was an icon of the grotesque. Japanese media turned him into a ghastly icon, part true crime curiosity, part urban legend. For some, he was a monster. For others, a tragic figure. Sick, perhaps, but not evil. Regardless, he was making money, living freely. Meanwhile, Renée's family mourned, quietly, with dignity. Her name, tragically, became a footnote in the story of her killer. As time passed, Sagawa's notoriety faded. Publishers stopped accepting his work, public appearances dwindled, his parents died in 2005, reportedly devastated by shame. Sagawa was not allowed to attend their funerals. He fell into poverty, moved into public housing, and lived on welfare. In 2013, he suffered a cerebral infarction and lost the use of his legs. From then on, he lived under the care of his brother and nurses. It ended not with a bang, but a cough. On November 24, 2022, Issei Sagawa died of pneumonia in a Tokyo hospital. He was 73. There was no public funeral, no media frenzy, no final statement, just a quiet, clinical death. The end of a life that, by all logic and morality, should never have unfolded the way it did. But Sagawa's story doesn't end with his death. It lingers. It asks questions we may not be ready to answer. How does a man confess to murder and cannibalism and walk free? Why did the media offer him a stage? And why did we watch? And deeper still, what does it say about us, the viewers, the readers, the curious minds, that we can't look away? Renée Hartevelt wasn't a headline. She wasn't a character in someone else's twisted narrative. She was a daughter, a friend, a gifted student with dreams of her own. And she deserved to be remembered for the life she lived, not the horror that stole it. This isn't just a tale of murder. It's a reflection of justice failed, of fame distorted, and of a darkness not only in one man, but in the world that let him shine. So the next time you find yourself drawn to a monster's story, ask yourself, are you looking to understand or just looking? Because some stories don't end when the screen fades to black. Some stay with you, right where the light doesn't reach.